Hi, welcome back to 10 Kids, 2 Docs. I'm Vivian.
And I'm Sylvia.
Today we're going to do something a little bit different because we are celebrating having released 10 episodes. So we are going to look back on what's been released and look ahead to what is to come.
I can't wait.
Welcome to the 10 Kids, 2 Docs podcast. Seasoned pediatricians and longtime friends, Sylvia Bank and Vivian Carlin have counseled thousands of parents and are raising 4 and 6 kids, respectively. Join these doctor moms as they incorporate fun and their combined wisdom and experience to share parenting insights for anyone looking for practical and trustworthy guidance. Please note that this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment from your doctor.
So, we are on our 10th episode of 10 Kids, 2 Docs, and we decided today we should look back on our previous 9 episodes, give updates, talk about feedback that we've gotten through our social media and our feedback email, and also discuss what is to come for our podcasts for the next 10 episodes.
Yeah, sounds good. So, Sylvia, I think I have a couple of ideas on things I want to discuss in this episode, but one of them is looking back. What are some of the high points for you? What are some of your favorite episode or favorite moments or things we've done well?
So I definitely think about this quite a bit because of, if the listeners also follow us on social media or YouTube, we have shorts associated with each of our episodes.
Cool. Do you have one that stands out?
Yes, I would have to say it probably is going to be the head lice one, where you are talking about the bugs crawling all over your child's hair, because it is so real. And I think a lot of people can really relate to that.
Oh yeah, right. Was I talking about how the teacher found it at school? I don't even remember.
Yes, the teacher found it at school. You were doing some sort of teaching in the hospital and had to come home and face a head full of bugs.
Yes. Okay. Which, by the way, I got the alert maybe a month ago. And for those of you that know me, when this episode is published, it's going to be even further after that, saying, hey, there's a chance your child was exposed to head lice.
So it's still something that you deal with as a mom regularly.
If you had any doubt, head lice are still alive and well and circulating in the community.
And I feel like that head lice story really just kind of encompasses the purpose of our podcast and what it is like to be a mom, where if you are not laughing at it, you are almost crying at it, right? Sometimes things can just be so overwhelming, right?
I do like that. I do like that a lot.
What about you? Do you have a favorite memory or the last 9 episodes, something that stood out for you?
First of all, I will say I think this has been quite a bit more fun than I expected.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yes. Wait, wouldn't you say? I mean, you do enjoy meeting with me, right?
I absolutely do. But I was looking, this was part of my vision, to be able to meet with you regularly and have fun. So I'm glad that you're seeing the benefits that I had outlined for the purpose of the podcast.
Okay. The other thing I will say that has gone well is, for you and I am very, very impressed with how good we have gotten at editing.
Yes.
I mean, this was very unexpected. In fact, I have heard Eric describing our podcast to friends, and he'll say something like, honestly, I thought I was going to have to be on-call tech support, but they've really taken it on their own.
I also feel like I have to give props to the software and the technology that exists for us to edit.
This is very true.
It is a great platform, and it makes the editing a lot easier, right?
That's true. But I will say, I've had 2 people independently ask me if we are using a producer. And I am so complimented. That being said, there are some episodes in this first 10 that I listen to now that we recorded way back, and I cringe and I'm like, why didn't I take that out or take out that sound bit or whatever? We've gotten so much better.
Yeah. And I think my learning curve with the social media has also increased drastically, since I'm not very social media savvy as a regular person. But in doing and promoting the podcast, I have definitely explored different platforms and making these reels. And, it's a whole new thing for me too.
Okay, I still have never posted an Instagram reel in my life. And on deck for me is learning how to do that so we can kind of tag team and really up our social media game. That is
Right.
definitely next. But you know, I
Yeah.
mean, for two people that are not tech savvy at all, I feel like we've done better than I expected.
Right. For just two moms. I mean, we claim to know a lot about pediatrics because we're mothers and pediatricians, but this whole tech aspect has been, a pleasant surprise how we've been able to navigate that.
Yes, yes, we did not claim to know anything about that. Okay, I think some of my favorite moments so far are the random, very random people in my life in the
Mm,
past that have reached out to me and just sent
mm,
me a message of like, "Hey, I really loved this episode." And the other cool thing about it is that it's always been different episodes.
really? So
Yes.
tell me your best blast from the past contact.
Okay, my best blast from the past, you know this one, is that my AP English teacher sent us an email on the feedback telling me how proud of me she was.
I remember seeing that, and I was looking through the feedback box at that time, and I was like, Vivian, you got to look at this. It's really, really touching.
It was so touching. That's a shout out to Mrs. Boothby. And even as a middle-aged woman, when my teacher tells me she's proud of me, like it's like such a good feeling. Like, oh yay, somebody's proud of me. That's great.
Do you know what I also really like?
What?
You and everybody knows this who listens. You and I have been friends for 25 years, but through our experience in storytelling in the format of different topics, I am learning so much about, you and parenting and the things that I didn't know that we did so different.
Oh yes. Yeah. Yeah, that is definitely true. I've heard stories that I didn't know about, which are very fun. What about what's hard, or what have you not liked?
Yeah. Like
Or
I
what have you
feel
found
like,
difficult? Maybe not liked is the wrong word.
or challenging. I think the most challenging thing for me is not the editing. I thought that was going to be quite challenging, but navigating the technology of like the different platforms and podcast sites that
Yes.
I'm still struggling with. I feel like I haven't really mastered that.
Yeah, I feel like the day that somebody asks us if we're using a social media marketer or like a podcast marketer, then we'll know we've really arrived in that area too. Really
Right
need some
now,
work on that.
yes, I know that there are holes, right?
Yes, right.
Um, what about
Although,
you?
okay, I think what has proven to be the most difficult, and our listeners probably don't realize this, is anytime we try to record a topic on teenagers, we
Mhm.
effectively stir a nest of hornets. It's like we have this idea on what we're going to talk about, and then we talk about it. And then at the end, it's a long recording and it's not really cohesive because there's so much to unpack. And it's like a
Mhm.
whole nest of hornets buzzing around. And then we have to go back to the drawing table to figure out how to make it more concise. It's just, they are so hard to tackle in a concise way. I feel like
Yeah,
that is going to be our nemesis. And because our early listeners started out mostly as our peers, our friends, they all have teenagers. So we're
right.
trying to put out content for them. And teenagers is just difficult. It is a
It's
nest of
so
hornets.
difficult. Yeah, I think a behind the scenes glimpse into how we make these podcasts, a lot of these episodes have been recorded, re-recorded, and re-recorded again, right?
Yes,
Just
the
just
teen
to kind
ones.
of, yes,
We think we
especially
know
the
what
teen
we're talking
ones.
about, and then we're like, wait, no, that was too much. We need to cut it down again and
Right.
again.
And it's almost like a working draft. You and I, we are kind of making this up as we go along in a lot of ways. And, if we record one and we feel like it's not really focused, it actually gets us focused maybe on the next recording to be more concise and to bounce ideas off of each other and what's going to work. Right. So it's kind of like a
Yeah,
work in progress.
it is. And honestly, I think in part because of that, I mean, I would have to say if I was forced to pick a favorite episode,
Hmm.
it would probably be one of the ones on teens. I mean, I
Mm,
really like the teens and facing failure. I also really like the teens and internal drive. In fact, I was at a conference recently that was all about adolescence and risk taking, which you and I are going to discuss. But the principles of our podcast on teens and internal drive came up so many times, where they talked about teens are not good at looking at the consequences of their actions. We need to engage them in a discussion of, why do you want to do that? What do you have stand to gain? What do you stand to lose, et cetera? I mean, it was like our podcast, and I felt so validated, because these are experts on adolescent medicine talking.
You know, I feel like medicine in general is kind of like that, where you want your doctor to be really good at the thing that you're seeking their help with. You know, if you have a hernia that needs surgery, you want to go to the doctor that does that every day, 6 times a day, 4 days a week, right? A very experienced doctor. And I feel like some of our topics that we've tackled are like that. They're kind of the bread and butter of what we do as parents and what we do as pediatricians. But what makes medicine interesting for doctors is often those cases that are not the bread and butter. You start thinking, you have to be creative. And I feel like for you and me, the teen episodes represent that, where we don't know what the answers are, and we have these ideas, and from our experience as parents and our experience as pediatricians, and we're actually kind of discovering things together, and I find that very interesting as well. I do like our teen episodes, although a struggle, it isn't just like one record and then the edit's done. It is very thought-provoking for us to engage in thought and organized thought about these things, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Actually, I do find that even for me, those are the episodes that sit the most on my mind. Mm-hmm. And I hear the things that we say, even in my mind, as I'm parenting my teens. So that's really cool too.
Yeah.
So I think what we should do now is transition to looking back on this last 10 weeks that we've been doing this, and how that has modified our vision for the future and what we want to do going forward.
Great.
Okay, so Sylvia, now that we have 10 weeks under our belt, what is on your mind going forward? Are there pressing topics? Is there feedback that you've gotten from listeners? What things are on your mind as you look ahead?
Sure. As I have been slowly recommending the podcast to patients in the practice, I do really want to cover some high yield bread and butter topics that I feel like I say multiple times a week when I'm in the office seeing patients. And a lot of those tend to be times where parents feel kind of at a loss or a little bit desperate. And the first one is sleep, and sleeping, baby sleeping, infant sleeping, how to instruct people to sleep through the night. Those are very high yield, high demand topics that I see the patient population a need for that.
Yes, I love that. Babies and sleeping through the night. That is coming right after this, right? Are we going to release that right after this?
Yeah, that's on the queue, right?
We have that ready to go. And I really enjoyed our discussion around that. Although not applicable to everybody, it was very enlightening for me. Kind of along those lines, over this past 10 weeks, something I've discovered is that an audience that I really find myself talking to more and more and want to reach out to more and more is young people in training to become pediatric providers, many of whom, they're young, in their 20s, may not even have children yet, and are needing to answer these questions like, how do you get your baby to sleep through the night, et cetera. And I find more and more that as I talk to these, I want to say kids, but they're not kids. I'm not quite that old yet.
Like providers in training, right?
right. That I feel more impassioned, where I'm like, guys, there's a crisis going on where parents are under pressure. Listen to the first episode, Parents Under Pressure. The Surgeon General is sounding the alarm. And I am passing the torch to you, because now part of your training is not just helping parents through when their child is sick. It is helping parents through parenting. Yeah. You're going to be on the front lines of helping parents parent their children. And this is such an important part of your job now. So I find myself really excited as I talk to these young professionals about this content.
Our podcast is the perfect, if I do say so myself, the perfect platform for those clinicians in training who maybe aren't parents themselves, because we do review AAP guidelines. We kind of review over-the-counter remedies or treatments that they can seek before seeing the pediatrician. These are, things that it's good for any pediatric provider to know before you delve into all of the, intricate, medical diagnoses that they've been trained to look for, right?
Yeah. Yeah. When I think about upcoming topics that are on my mind and some of the feedback we've gotten, I've had a couple that have come up again and again. And one of them is autism. And I'm excited for us to get to go further in autism and my thoughts on that and how we do that. I mean, first and foremost, this is a parenting podcast by pediatricians. Our vision is that we combine our pediatric knowledge with our parenting. And as you know, neither you or I have raised a child with autism.
Right.
And I have nephews with autism, and I have very close friends with children with autism. And I am certainly a student of those parents and the decisions they've made. But the point of this podcast is, what do you do as a parent when you have two things: that fierce love for your child that is irreplaceable, as well as extensive pediatric knowledge? And what I hope to do and have vision for is inviting guests on who are pediatricians or physicians with children with autism who can discuss this with us. And you know, you and I have multiple people in mind. So I recognize that as a group that needs community. And I hope that we can start to provide that too as we explore autism at some point with help from parents.
Yeah. I mean, the topics that we kind of have chosen thus far and that we have on the queue are things that you and I have experienced firsthand, and it makes it much easier to discuss and talk about. But in the future, we will discuss topics that we don't have firsthand experience as parents with as well.
Right. Although I think you and I have experience with maybe like 95%.
A large percentage of things.
We haven't even gone into special education yet, and we've got that whole box to unwrap, which I have experience in. So,
do you know what else I have noticed about our future topics? So, like we've said before in our pilot, we met together before releasing the podcast to brainstorm on potential topics, of which we came up with, what was it, 490 different topics? Was that what it was?
Like 150.
Okay, 150 different topics.
It was 3 years worth of content right off the bat, without even having to plan any additional topics.
But I feel like every time we do an episode, it's like we're just adding to that list. You know, not to say that we haven't tackled topics on our original list, but I feel like as the weeks go on, our list is just growing. It's actually not getting smaller.
Yeah, this is true. I will say, I don't even know that this was on our list, but one that I've heard come up, I think 3 times from very different contexts, is this idea of gentle parenting. And so I'm excited for you and I to do gentle parenting, because I can certainly talk about that from the pediatrician advising you in the office perspective. And then I can tell you, well, what did I do at home? Right.
Right. The other one that I hear all the time in the office as well, I just talked about it yesterday, is this baby-led weaning.
Oh, yes.
Right. And all these different trends with parenting, and just getting our hot take on it. Right. Like I gave someone my thoughts and advice on their decision whether or not to baby-led wean and why, based on the child's growth chart and the child's developmental stage. It is a hot topic right now.
It is. Yes. So in my mind, you mentioned infants in sleep. Autism will need to be up there when we start to bring on guests. Gentle parenting, baby-led weaning, all of these. I will say another funny story is that when I was just, talking with my family and saying how at some point we wanted to do one on teens and advising them during dating, my daughter suggested that she would like to be a guest on our show because she wants to make sure we are fully educated on the, what it means to be in the talking stage, and whether that's over Snapchat or text, what it means to be undelivered, and what it means to actually leave somebody undelivered, and all of the frustration that their generation is experiencing with dating that we didn't have to.
I feel like we do need a young person as a guest to inform us all on the new terminology and ways of dating in today's time.
Yes, exactly. So I don't know when or if we'll get to that one. That will definitely be stirring a nest of hornets. So
yeah, we appreciate the feedback though. We have comments open on our Spotify and YouTube accounts. We have feedback 10kids2docs.com email address where you can directly write to us. And we have been reading your emails and responding to you. So please keep it coming.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
And we can't thank the listeners enough.
Oh, yes.
Our numbers have been more than what we expected in our launch of this podcast, and sharing our podcast, listening to our podcast. We see some analytics and statistics based on our listeners. So we just want to thank you so much for listening to us, subscribing to us, and following us and our journey through our podcasting, and maybe you're journeying through parenting.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. So yay, cheers to 10 weeks.
10 weeks. This is 10 Kids, 2 Docs. I'm Sylvia.
And I'm Vivian. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to 10 Kids, 2 Docs, hosted and created by Sylvia Bank and Vivian Carlin. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and recommend our podcast to other listeners. Visit our website at 10kids2docs.com, where you can find links to social media and leave comments or suggestions. Back next week with more topics in parenting.